Hi there. My name is Dee, but I am actually, my title nowadays tends to be The Persistent Pensioner. And you can find my blogs on www.thepersistentpensioner.co.uk. I'm a waspy woman. I'm 61 in June. And just to cut it short, I've had just over 6 years of my pension taken away from me with no notice. Didn't find out till 2017. No letter, no notice, nothing, and now no pension. It's lost me something in the region of £51,000, amongst other things, like they brought in by stealth recently, which is the changes to the pension credits. So I actually, they call it the toy boy tax, because if you have a partner that's younger than you stand to lose up to £7,000 a year if you should need it. If your wages are so low that you need it, they're taking that away, so you actually stand to lose up to £7,000 a year. I'm talking particularly today to the 1950s women, or any 1950s women that are just waking up to the realisation that they've had their pension stolen. And I do mean stolen, okay? I'm not mincing words here. So what's inspired me to this latest blog, which is called Pressing All the Wrong Buttons, was the headlines the other day, and we've had a massive spate of pensioner bashing headlines, and trying to turn the young against pensioners. So basically, it made me think, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And I started to put what I hope is two and two together and making four and not five. And it occurred to me there might be a reason for that, and that's what my blog's about. So I'm going to just launch into as much as I can of it, and I hopefully won't waste too much of your time, but you really need to hear this, and particularly women who have no knowledge of what's happened to them, you need to learn. And please stick to the end, because you really do need to learn. Okay, thank you. I'm off. So basically, huge glut of pensioner bashing articles at the moment. So I hope you'll catch my drift on this, of why I think it's occurring. So I know that most of you 50s women who are actually fully aware of what's happening at the moment will be laughing sarcastically right now. You're going to be making a few expletives. And you're probably hurriedly slurping your coffee as you're going out to a job that you are really too old and too tired to actually physically or mentally do anymore. You might have others of you who are looking at your rent arrears statement and wondering whether you're going to have a roof over your heads, in the next year. I've had one comment on my one of my blogs that nearly reduced me to tears, and it gets me emotional now, from a woman who is clearly suicidal. So I'm going to stop talking about that because it drives me crazy. But anyway, this glut of propaganda seems to have occurred since the Back to 60 and WASPy campaigners started to increase their visibility. More so, I think, since Back to 60 actually won the right to take the government to court, which is happening on the 5th and 6th of June. Note the date, yeah? I think either the government is frantically trying to plug the gap in their finances that they may have to pay back to us because of our stolen pensions. It may go against them. I hope it does. If there's any justice in this world, it will do. But, there's so much corruption. So let's hope that justice is served in this. So they're either trying to plug the gap of what's going to have to be paid back for the things that they've taken from us, or that maybe they have another more sinister, more important reason for putting us persistent pensioners through the emotional, psychological and financial cosh in the media, and more worryingly so, that they're recently trying to turn the younger generations, who we are trying to protect the future of, against us. So historically, instead of 1950s women actually going away as expected, when Ian Duncan Smith arrogantly and callously dismissed us with those wonderful words, "Ignore them, they'll go away." He wrongly assumed that because of our age and our upbringing in a society where we were discriminated against most of our lives in various ways, and where we were expected to put up or shut up, that we wouldn't have the strength to fight back. And I think in doing that, he waved the proverbial red flag to the 1950s women, and our watchword then became "not going away." What the perpetrators of what we call the Great State Pension Robbery, and you can research this, starting with Maggie Thatcher, didn't foresee was that this particular group of women, who they thought was probably the most likely easy target, was on the cusp of the technological revolution. We'd bought teenagers computers in the 90s for presents, I certainly did. And in doing so, we started then to learn from our children. So whilst the reliance on technology took away the ability for social discourse from our own offspring, it actually gave us oldies additional powers, and eventually we learned to research online. We began to communicate with each other via Facebook, and now, God forbid, us birds are actually, as we were called in the 70s, are actually learning to tweet, Pinning is no longer something we do to a hem. We're actually keyboard warriors, and we're becoming quite relentless. So they were right to some extent. Some of us women are clearly too indoctrinated by our upbringing to be vocal and out on the streets protesting, which is a great sadness to me. And for every one of us breaching the press barriers at Westminster, waving anything that's symbolic and purple, standing up in the Houses of Commons to protest on Budget Day and making the news by getting the standing ovation from the House, that was a day that BBC deemed as newsworthy. For every one of these women, there are 1,000 more 1950s women who are fighting for us as keyboard warriors, as we are for them by being on the streets. These women are part of an army of keyboard warriors, basically, who are researching about how the law works and about what goes on in Parliament, the hypocrisy, the half-truths, waste and incompetence, and more importantly, they are checking the historic budgets and the National Insurance Fund records and government reports, and they're sharing their findings. That makes them dangerous because of what they may just turn up. Think about it. Even more, we're being a real nuisance because we're actually daring to pursue formal DWP complaints as much as they try to block us, and writing letters to MPs, emailing them, and we all expect an answer. How dare the plebs stand up and oppose us? Well, we dare. Get used to it. Many of these women have to work. Many cannot afford the train fares to London to protest, or they're simply too ill or too broken down, as I said earlier about that poor woman. They can't be alongside us more unfortunate ones who maybe have enough money to get to London. It's hard for me, I'm penny pinching, but I do it. Others have caring responsibilities that are full-time for either their parents or their grandchildren. And these women, along with more active campaigners, they're sharing, they're learning, and they're seeking truth. And because of that, we become a threat to the liars and the peddlers of spin. So for every women currently standing outside theatres, to challenge hypocrisy of false prophets. Did I say the word Anne Widdecombe there? As one, yeah, and these retired MPs who are already adding to their full coffers and massaging their inflated egos and doing the speaker trail. For every woman standing shoulder to shoulder outside those theatres and on street corners every Saturday lunchtime, now being joined by men because they're realising that we're all affected by this, that there's actually a far bigger issue than just 1950s women's stolen pensions here. For every one, there are 10,000 more who are only just waking up to this. I didn't find out till 2017. They're waking up with horror to see the catastrophic effects on their own lives and the knock-on effect to their children's and their family lives as carers and babysitters and people to help their children on the mortgage ladder because they might have a bit of savings, which they're now having to spend to survive. To all these women, hopefully if you're watching this blog now, join us, please. There's so many of us, we're so active, but only in total unity. And there's 3.8 million of you out there. For goodness sake, you cannot turn down 3.8 million out on the streets protesting. Please join us if you can. But if you can't, at least join your local pensions injustice group. It really doesn't matter what group. Just get the information to fight back. These groups are out there. You know, there's so many. There's WASPy groups. There is Shoulder to Shoulder, One Voice, Women's Pension Injustice. Just Google it. There's even one called the Lincolnshire Lionesses, hi Hazel, that I found out about yesterday. Join it and find out, get the information to fight back. Do whatever is needed to bring the wave of outrage that we need to its crest by June the 5th in the judicial review. And please share. Wear your purple. Tell your family and anyone who'll listen what's being done to them right now. The National Insurance Fund is for all our futures. Keep with me. It'll become clear. Knowledge is power. So learn what they've done to you, you know. So my rant's over. I'm just going to sum up with this. Look again at the recent spate of multiple financial propaganda attacks from the government upon the 1950s women and pensioners in general, and ask yourself why. Is it purely to plug the financial gap that they've created by their previous incompetence and self-interest? Or is it because we are uncovering the truth of why all us, men and women, are being told that pensions aren't sustainable, that we can't retire at 60 after a life of hard work with a decent pension? If we all had the truth, we would really be questioning the pittance they've allowed us from our own contributions. Yet still we have one of the worst pensions in Europe. They're telling us how fortunate we are to have increased pensions in the triple lock while they're getting ready to get rid of the triple lock. You know, it's spin. More importantly, ask yourself where the 400 billion went in the last 24 years that would have given us the investment return in the National Insurance Fund to literally fund us properly in later life. You know, systematically for the last 24 years, that fund was working. And when they saw it was working and standing on its own, they let it go. They reduced the input into it from the subsidy from the government. When they saw it was still standing on its own, they started to take out the surplus as some kind of private slush fund for whatever you want. £3 million on Westminster's biscuit fund for 1 year. See what I'm saying? You know, it was paying for anything, the banks, anything, but it was our money. And it would have now given us decent retirements for men and women from the age of 60. You know, it should have included social care, bus passes, benefits that don't reduce you to whether you've got a choice of whether to heat or eat, you know, and then ask yourself what's at stake for these real charlatans. I, for one, with my husband, will be going down to Westminster on the 5th of June to stand outside Parliament for Prime Minister's question time, and we will be making a noise. It's the 2 days of the judicial review where Back to 60 is taking the government to court to sue them for injustice and the inequality against us 1950s women. We will also be stood outside the judicial courts, the Royal Courts of Justice, on the 6th, supporting Back to 60. They've asked us not to wear our WASPy gear. We're absolutely fine with that because it doesn't matter what group we are. We're all 1950s women. So to those women now that think that they're not strong enough, that they haven't got the time, they haven't got the money, you can do something. You can. Yeah, and the sisterhood and the friendship I have got from these women is amazing. Some of these women have been fighting for 5 years. I'm in awe of them. I'm in awe. I've only been doing it for a year. I'm exhausted, but you know what? I'm not going away. So all the best. I hope we see you soon. Look at my blog page and read everything fully. www.thepersistentpensioner.co.uk, and I hope to see you outside Westminster.